So guys, before I begin, if you can, please subscribe to my other channel, Crimecast. I'll put the link in the description below. I'd appreciate it if you go give it a follow. In the next couple of days, I'll be putting up a video there. As I said, I'll probably be posting once or twice a week on there, but big respect if you can subscribe over there. So in this next news story, the youngest knife killer in the UK was a drill-obsessed troublemaker involved in violent gangs. Whilst he was just 9 years old, it's been revealed. The 12-year-old killer was jailed today for hacking a teenager, Sean Sisahi, may he rest in peace, to death with a 16-inch machete in a Wolverhampton park last November. Back in July, the judge rejected a request from media organisations to strip the boy of his automatic right to anonymity due to his age. Mrs. Justice Tipples at the time said the welfare of the boy and his accomplice outweighed the wider public interest and open justice principles. The youngster was the ringleader of a gang made up of other yobs of a similar age who loitered around in estates in Wolverhampton, smoking weed and often walking around wearing ballies and bandanas. He was described as an out-of-control terror who caused havoc on a rundown Wolverhampton council estate where he lived. The boy was such a menace in his local area that everybody was scared of him. Neighbours barricaded their homes. One had even barricaded his home with barbed wire, whilst another had CCTV installed. The gang was known for being obsessed with gang culture and terrorised every resident. They smashed windows, let off fireworks in people's houses, vandalised cars, jumped on cars, stole from local shops. And it's believed the 12-year-old was well known to the police for theft and violence, but he'd never ever been charged with any offence. He actually lived on the estate with his grandmother. So sources stated that his father was in prison whilst his mother lived elsewhere in Wolverhampton, that the youngster was openly brag about using knives, violence and drugs. The court was told that the children's services had been involved in his life since he was a baby. Well, don't seem to have done a good job on him. In the months preceding the killing, police had recovered knives from the boy's home, and he was so fixated with blades that even following his arrest for murder, the boy was found drawing pictures of them whilst in custody. One neighbour said the boy caused complete terror and all his pals looked up to him. He was the big don of the area. He was the worst of the lot of them, and he was the leader of the pack. It didn't surprise us at all when we heard that he had done something so serious, because he was an accident waiting to happen. He was looking to social media to share his obsession with violent gang culture. He could be seen in various social media videos rapping along to songs and making reference to pokers, which is UK slang for knife, and plugs, which refers to dealers. In other footage, the boy was making gun signs and was wearing a bandana on his head as his grandmother was watching, and he's also obsessed with a number of other drill artists, and he would walk around with knives and machetes in his trousers, and then he'd start swinging the blades and wanting to do mad things with it. So the trial heard that the two boys were roaming the streets on the 13th of November last year when they got into a confrontation with Sisahi and his friends over a park bench. His friends fled, but Sean stumbled to the floor, and in the ensuing attack he was punched, kicked, stamped on and chopped at with a weapon, with one stab wound puncturing his heart and lung. There was conflicting evidence over which of the boys had inflicted the fatal injuries with the machete, although one admitted to owning the 42.5 centimetre long blade and was known to have regularly carried weapons. The court heard that this boy, deemed by the prosecution to be the initial aggressor in the attack, had believed to be been groomed, exploited and trafficked by older youths and young men in the wider community who encouraged him towards the possession of knives. The representative for him said he was being exploited by those older than him. One has to think of the place he was found sometimes late at night with no explanation how he got there. The court heard he had experienced significant trauma in his life, was at high risk of exploitation, and came from a deprived home with family members who were regular offenders. One of Sean's friends told the court how they were threatened as they sat on this park bench discussing their plans for Christmas. He said, as one of the youth reached for his blade, Sean shouted, "Run, bro, run." He told the court the dude took it out of his sheath. We started to run, but Sean tripped. I was running for my life. I couldn't stay there and watch. After fleeing the scene, the killers went to one of the boys' homes where they played Fortnite whilst Mr. Sisahi lay dying. One later said on Snapchat, "Everyone's talking about it. Literally everyone knows," and his accomplice responded with the note, "It is what it is." They then shared more messages saying, "I'm scared, man," before the other says, "I'm not," followed by the acronym I don't really care, IDRC. The family of Sean Sisahi said they are haunted by thoughts of how scared he must have been when he was killed. In a victim impact statement read to the court, relatives of Mr. Sisahi described the 19-year-old's killing as tragic, unexpected, and senseless, and having been committed for no reason at all. Relatives of Mr. Sisahi were forced actually to take out a loan to travel to the UK to view the 20-day trial, having watched the sentencing and hearing via a video link. The family statement read, "We make this statement in relation to the tragic, unexpected, and senseless murder of our beloved son and brother Sean, who was tragically taken from us in November last year. As a family, we are struggling in so many ways since Sean was taken from us, especially in the horrific way in which he was taken. Losing a child is a parent's worst nightmare. To put it all down in a statement on how it has impacted our lives would take more than a day to read. It has left a huge hole in the pit of our stomach, which nothing can fill, and we are devastated as a family, totally heartbroken and confused." The statement added that Sean was incredibly close to his younger sister, who had always dreamed of being there for his wedding and being there for hers. The family members said, "Mentally, it has been hard for us to function normally. None of us have had an unbroken night's sleep since Sean was taken from us. Every time I close his eyes, all I think about are his last moments were and how scared he must have been. Continually breaks my heart. The impact on us as a family is devastating. It's hard to believe that we will never ever come to terms with what has happened. We will never get to see Sean get married or have a family of his own, and these things have been taken from us for what appears to be no reason at all." At Nottingham Crown Court today, the judge told the boys, "What you both did is horrific and shocking. You both killed Sean in an attack that lasted less than a minute when he asked you to move from where you were on a park bench. Sean did not deserve to be attacked. He did not deserve to die. It's clear that the sentence I have decided to pass cannot make that right." So I'm going to come to the sentencing in a moment, guys. But she added, "What you did in those short few moments also changed your life forever. You will have to live with the consequences. I cannot be sure which one of you stabbed Sean. Only you know that, but you acted together." The judge told the boys, "When you killed Sean, he was 19, starting out his life, his adult life, with everything to live for. His parents have lost their son. His sister has lost her brother. What you did is horrific and shocking. You did not know Sean. He was a stranger to you. You both killed Sean in an attack that lasted less than a minute when he asked you to move from a park bench. I'm sure you intended to kill him." So, the sentencing, guys, actually, we'll come to that in a second. So, during the brief sentencing remarks, one of the boys nodded throughout with his hands held towards his face, and as he was taken away, the youth was allowed to hug his mum. The other boy was seen biting his lip as the judge spoke and appeared shocked as the sentence was handed down. 6 members of the jury returned to Nottingham Crown Court to see the boys sentenced, and Mr. Sisahi's family watched the proceedings on a live video link from their home in Anguilla. Ahead of the hearing today, the judge warned that the sentence would not bring them comfort, but would at least bring legal proceedings to a close.
It is a detailed and comprehensive report in which the social workers have collated information in relation to the first defendant from all relevant sources, both in terms of documents and speaking to the relevant people, including the first defendant. I have read all of this report with care and taken all that it says into account. Part of the report deals with the assessment of the first defendant, including consideration of safety and welfare issues. This section in the report details the extensive involvement of children's services in the first defendant's life and the reasons for that. The report also explains, amongst other things, that the first defendant has been referred to mental health services and there have been instances of self-harm. He was diagnosed with ADHD in 2022. It is in this context and against this factual background that the report says this, and I quote, "Having spoken with the first defendant and consulted records held about him, we would assess that the first defendant seems to function at a lower level than his chronological age, both in terms of understanding and his emotional literacy. The first defendant is a child with extremely complex needs, ability to regulate his emotions in the moment and to take informed decisions. He was made even more vulnerable through his ADHD diagnosis. The starting point of 13 years needs to be adjusted downwards because the first defendant's chronological age was that he'd relatively recently turned 12 at the date of the offence. I then have to take into account that at the time of the offence, his emotional maturity and developmental age were less than that. He has been adversely affected by multiple traumas throughout his childhood, for which he is and cannot be responsible. These are all factors which diminish the culpability of the first defendant. The first defendant always accepted he bought the knife and took it to the field, and he's shown some insight into the harm he has caused. But I agree with the authors of the pre-sentence report that he does not at this stage have the maturity to fully appreciate the consequences of his actions. On top of that, he's making progress with his behaviour and education in the stable and settled environment where he is living, and that should continue to progress. The first defendant did not have any previous convictions, but he was known to the police and had been carrying knives. But that has to be considered in the context that he was the victim of trafficking and extremely vulnerable. I have taken into account everything I know about the first defendant and what he did, and in my judgment the minimum time he should spend in custody is 8 years 6 months. From that must be deducted the 315 days that he's already spent in custody. The first defendant will remain on licence for the rest of his life. This means that there are conditions that will be decided when the parole board decide it's appropriate for him to leave custody, and he will have to follow those conditions for the rest of his life. The pre-sentence report for the second defendant has been prepared by the 2 social workers who were allocated to work with him from when he was remanded in a secure unit in November last year. It is dated July 2024 and is a detailed and comprehensive report, which has also gathered information about the second defendant from all relevant sources, both in terms of documents and speaking to the relevant people, including the second defendant. I have taken into account everything I know about the second defendant and what he did, and in my judgment, the minimum time he should spend in custody is 8 years 6 months. From that must be deducted the 315 days that he has already spent in custody.
Guys, the sentences are as follows. Both boys were sentenced to a minimum term of 8 years and 6 months for taking a man's life. Just want to say rest in peace, Sean. My condolences go out to your family. Let me know what you think in the comments below. It's your boy GC. Keep it locked, keep it real.